I've got Judy on the line here, so we're having the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, call the meeting to order. Roll call. Judy here. Bonnie Richter here. Well, I'll just go down the line. Gary Jones.
Here.
Bob Turner.
Here.
Dave Humphreys.
Here.
Terry Langton. Here. So we have a roll call. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed you.
I miss you too, Bonnie.
Sandra Lester. Who was here at the end? Okay, so everybody's here. We've established a quorum. Prior to us going forward with the approval of the agenda, I just want to make an announcement that Linda Ruff has taken another job and will be leaving us on the 14th. And so, I can't talk any louder.
I don't know how you could do that. How can you leave us?
I can't make it any louder.
She's a smart one.
Yeah, I know.
I can't make it any louder. Okay, so now I'd like approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I make a motion we approve the agenda as posted.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay, that's unanimous. Now we will go to the disposal of the minutes from the April 19th meeting. I'd like to have a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and approve them as listed. Does anybody have any objections?
I would make that motion.
Okay, Judy made a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and approve them as posted. Any discussion?
Were they posted?
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved as posted. Now, we're going to go on to our meeting tonight, and I'm pretty much going to hand over most of the meeting to our attorney, Mr. David Bernstein. I'm sure many of you have seen him over the last several months, and so we're lucky enough to have him with us again tonight.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I can hear very well.
Good.
Okay, Judy. I want to thank everybody for being here. This is a Board of Directors meeting, noticed as a special board meeting. In the past, when you have seen me, they've been shareholder meetings, in addition, of course, to workshops that we've had. And what's nice about this evening, in addition to the turnout, seeing all the shareholders at this meeting, is the fact the air conditioning's on here. I can remember being here. You remember those hot, steamy afternoons that we spent together with no air conditioning? How many people were here then? Yeah. Well, we've got the meeting scheduled tonight so that we could discuss as a board and inform those of you here or that will later watch this by video of the proposed course of action to move forward with the sale transaction that has been brought to the shareholdership for vote. Just to sort of give a little history, and certainly this has taken on a great deal of interest in this community, understandably, and resulted in a record number of proxies received from your shareholdership. You should know that the largest turnout of any referendum in the history of this community that I'm aware of and have been instructed to be the case is this sale referendum. and that we sit here this evening with proxies in hand from greater than 85% of the shareholdership. I tell you that because it's remarkable, particularly given the history here where people have often not voted on, I see people shaking their heads, referendums or initiatives. For this particular initiative, over 85% of you have already cast a vote. Now that number will climb, because when the actual official meeting takes place to count the votes, there will be some that will tender ballots. The votes that I'm speaking of, not all of them, yes, but all the votes that I'm speaking of are proxy votes. And the proxy votes count as a ballot. For those that have tendered proxies, they will be counted as a ballot. Some folks will wait for the actual evening of the vote and tender a ballot. So it's safe to say that north of 85% that we're speaking of will actually go even higher. I'm guessing north of 90% will vote. Remarkable, 9 out of 10 shareholders voting on anything. I don't think you could bring in 10 donuts and have 9 of them disappear, right? Because someone will always turn down 1 or 2. Let me say this, we were going to the vote on May 10th. And as we were approaching within a week of the vote, due to some very good work of several of the board members, an audit which I undertook coming in to count proxies, and also some financial reviews, it became apparent that there were some discrepancies in some of the financial matters in this community. There were some legal procedures that were implemented by prior counsel that were resulting in some unfavorable results to the corporation. And having gone through those items with your board, it was determined to postpone and adjourn the vote, which you all, of course, got notice of, to a date to be determined. Proxies under Florida law being good for 90 days. The date of the scheduled meeting that we postponed, originally being scheduled for May 10th. 90 days from May 10th would mean those proxies are good until how far out? August 10th, very good. And therefore, all the proxies that have been tendered are good proxies. All that remains is to reschedule the vote. The board is considering, and we're going to discuss tonight, a calendaring of the next date for that vote. Given that on our agenda, we're discussing the postponement of the meeting and the update on the sale and scheduling, it will be appropriate that we discuss that among and perhaps have a vote on that this evening. But I want to give the board and those of you here as shareholders some other information. Because of the need to be certain, and you've received 2 messages, at least 2, I believe, from your president, perhaps other messages as well on various outlets here, but I know there have been 2 letters from the president that I've seen that have outlined what I'm telling you here, which is it's important that the information that you vote on is accurate. And when the irregularity became apparent, we pulled back the date of the vote in order to be able to give each shareholder written information on that, which will be forthcoming in the next couple of weeks, perhaps even sooner, but no longer than that. If the vote date is scheduled for the first week of August, there'll be plenty of time for everyone to receive that information and decide whether they wish to keep their proxy in place or not. And that will be explained in the package that you will receive. So there are really two items that caused the vote to be postponed and adjourned. The first was, as I said, being certain the financial information, which includes the amounts in your various accounts, the amount collateralized with your lender, is accurate and as close to the point as can be to the actual dollar and cent. And then secondly, that the legal procedures be corrected so that rather than having shares go to auction or shares go out to speculators and investors, which have happened here through judicial sales or auction sales or tax sales, that there be a method for those that have not maintained their status, good status with you, that those shares be terminated on the books of the corporation so that the value of the share and the upside of the share, increased value, go to all of you to share in rather than outsiders who might bid on it through one of those sources. There are presently now pending approximately 12 of those cases. Next week, there will be another board meeting here, a special board meeting, and Linda will post that notice tomorrow. And that board meeting will be on the 14th. And in that board meeting, as a result of what I'm speaking about, there will be a decision by the board on those cases that are pending to determine if those shareholders should have their shares terminated. And if they are terminated, then as I said, the value of the share inures to the benefit of the corporation and ultimately all of you. It's no small decision because each share has a significant value, a value that is going to either go to a third person or to the corporation. So next week's meeting is important for that purpose. And there may be others that will be subject to termination as well. And those termination rights are in your bylaws, your amended and restated bylaws and documents that govern your corporation. It's just a procedure that other council in the past has not implemented, and that we did recommend that your corporation in fact implement for the benefit of all of you, as I just discussed. So, with the postponement of the May 10th meeting and the intention to have the information packaged in a mailing to each of you within the next couple of weeks, if not sooner, that will supplement the information that you've received and cast your proxies on, there will be an opportunity to have the vote take place in the beginning of August. It will be renoticed. We'll decide potentially this evening what that date will be, and you will receive notice of that in the package I'm speaking of. By all indications, the groundswell here is incredible. And there are a lot of people that are in receipt of very bad information, rumors, and all sorts of falsehoods. One of the reasons I'm here to speak to you is to try to give the assurance to you that there is no need for anyone to panic, to think for any reason that the potential purchaser, ELS, is pulling out of this transaction or not interested. And to the contrary, through continued negotiation and discussion with their lawyers and their senior management, they are fully apprised and extremely pleased, as all of you will be at the end of this transaction, to know that you're receiving absolutely full and fair disclosure. You're receiving absolutely corrected information, and that these procedures that we're going through now to correct the legal work that had previously been handled could inure to your benefit by over $1 million. And that, as they say, ain't chicken feed. So, to the extent you're hearing anyone, even a board member, not that they would do it intentionally, or a shareholder, or anyone in the office, or the mailman, or the pool man, or anyone else tell you something, rest assured, it is highly likely that it is not accurate. What is accurate is what you're hearing tonight. And that isn't to take anything away from anyone sitting here or there or anywhere. It's just to be sure that the air is clear as it is cool in here this evening. The buyer is very much interested in continuing with the $70 million acquisition. The terms of their letter of intent have not changed or wavered one bit. And they know that if they tried to negotiate out of any of those terms, that they would negotiate themselves out of an opportunity to purchase this community. So let me make it very, very clear that we've held their feet to the fire, and this postponement of the vote has nothing whatsoever to do with them. But in response to it, they have been extremely pleased and are going to remain patient. After all, if this goes forward, you are their customer. You are their ambassador. You are the reason they would be buying this community. And in the most plain terms I can say, they don't want you upset, angry, or in any way, feeling that you weren't given all the information you should have. And so that information is what this is about. The packages that come to you will supplement what you've received. You will have an opportunity, if you desire, to change your proxy position, to do so. If you wish, if you haven't voted, you will have the opportunity to do so. And I wonder, by show of hands, is there anyone here this evening that by any chance hasn't received the prior information or been in a prior meeting or maybe here for the first time? I wouldn't think so. Okay. Then clearly you've all been through the workshops, the meetings, received the handouts, seen the postings, and the next door comments and videos are online for those that wish to go back through them. The CPA firm that you have retained for this transaction is overviewing and reviewing the financial information and in contact with your lender and in contact with your investors, your investment advisors, I should say, and reviewing your investments. And so therefore, that will all be finalized and will be part of the information going to you. With the buyer in hand, and we'll get to questions later, with the buyer in hand, there is an interest from the buyer to enter into an agreement to evidence their intent. And one of the things that the board will decide, they could be calling right now, is to determine if we want to do that. Let me say to the board, there's good reason to do it. Number one, there's been rumors out here that I am, of course, speaking to that aren't accurate, and this would certainly go a long way in putting that to rest. Number two, in no particular order, but also keep in mind that you want them to not delay this transaction, and if they're willing to come in and start spending money to do their inspections, their due diligence, as if they're under contract, it's good reason to let them do that, and therefore not put us in a situation where that clock of theirs starts running in August. There is an opportunity, in other words, to get them to start doing that at their expense before August or September, at no risk to us, which is a good thing. So we'll talk more about that, but in the negotiations and discussions that I've had with them, it has, I guess we should have asked for cell phones to go up, to be turned off during the meeting. So if you could please turn your cell phones off, it'd be appreciated. It'd be an opportunity for us to get the clock rolling. What does the change in the vote date mean to the closing of this transaction if the vote is favorable for it and it is to go forward? Well, as Bonnie has reported, the transaction would still close this year, and obviously we know in the minds of many, the sooner the better. For those that feel that way or are worried about the delay, you should be assured that there is an opportunity for the buyer to get in here earlier to do inspections and not be in a situation where it gets postponed beyond the end of the third quarter or fourth quarter of this year. We had always anticipated that the closing could be as early as September. This will likely mean that the closing would not be until later in the year, possibly the end of October or November. The reason it could be sooner is if they can get started in here sooner doing all of their physical work, which includes hiring a land surveyor, hiring an appraiser, going through their process of internal audits of your accounts, which, by the way, the work we're doing now speeds along that process. Them coming in and having their engineers get with local government and be able to do their reviews of the property, all in anticipation of a vote going forward to sell. If it doesn't go forward to sell for any reason, then that would be at their expense and there would be no cost to us and no risk to us. However, it would keep the process rolling along as if the vote already took place. So there is reason to do it and let them take that on. And in good faith, they've agreed that they would, in fact, come in here and start that process. In short, let me say, the postponement of the May 10th meeting could mean up to approximately a 60 to 90 day delay in closing this transaction. But if it did, it would still close in this calendar year. I'm hoping no one here has spent the money yet. I'm guessing many have plans to. And by the number of proxies that have been received, it's clear where the sentiment of this community is. Now look, I know there will always be a few that don't want this transaction to go forward. I will tell you, I am more committed than ever to the belief now, having been a part of the audit and seeing what's happening with your financials, to know that the sentiment of this community is well-founded. It's your decision. I think most of you have made it. But it doesn't look like you've got as much money as you thought you did, right, put away. And the cost of this community is not getting less expensive. And the risk of operation at the financial level you're at right now is at your peril. With all that said, anyone can have the view that you should continue to own it. Just be prepared for what that might cost and understand why so many of you, and respect why so many of you have already cast your proxy, because of the concerns you have for that possibility. So let's just look at it this way. Better to be right than fast. Better to know you're in good hands with everything being reviewed very carefully than not. Better to know your board is acting prudently. And better to know that you will be in position, if you wish to have this transaction go forward, to still have the vote and do that in this calendar year. I have heard a few people say, my goodness, it's hurricane season. And why can't we speed this up? I think there was something on Nextdoor about that. Remember, this transaction has always been slated for a third quarter, as early as September 1st, but sometime in the month of September closing. Hurricane season continues through September into October. So you would have been in that situation either way. Bonnie, have I missed going over anything that you can think of? Anybody at the board level want me to supplement anything that I've discussed here with anything that you'd like me to deal with? Bob, anything in your mind you want me to supplement? David? Terry? Yeah, I could talk also about this, thank you, Bonnie, this point, which is very important, the number of shareholders. The number of shareholders in this community is very important. It determines not just how many shareholders are here or on your roster for the purpose of a community statistic. Because you are potentially selling this community, the number of shareholders is extremely important because it's the number which the sale proceeds and your cash proceeds gets divided by, right? And in the auditing we talked about, as we were going through the proxy process, there were some shareholder lists that were generated, and it became clear as they were being reviewed again, that over the course of time in this community, predating this administration and carried over from previous administrations, that there had been some miscalculations and some opportunities missed in terms of correcting your roster. Accordingly, the number of shareholders was incorrect and frankly undeterminable as of the 3rd of May, the 4th of May, the 5th of May, in going into the week of the vote, therefore, was a major reason why seeing these inconsistencies, the decision was made to postpone and adjourn the vote. When you get the supplement to your information package that I spoke to earlier, you're going to get an outline of this. You're going to see a few numbers used that will indicate to you that if the shareholder count is this, then the proceeds will be anticipated to each of you to be X, and if it were that, it would be Y. And it has to be that way because there are some irregularities. You have some shareholders that are listed, for example, who have not been in this community for years. Oh, you have a lot of money? It may surprise you. It may not, but you had some shareholders listed who are no longer with us. And I don't mean just don't live in the community. They don't live anywhere. So we can't count them. Matter of fact, some of those are subject to termination next week. And that is part of what has required the postponement and adjournment of the vote, to be certain that the number of shareholders, the number of folks that share in the proceeds can be accurately identified, and that information will follow. Sir, do you want to find a chair? We'll take a second. I think there's one back here, and there's one right over here, sir, at this stage.
Thank you.
You bet.
Can we also discuss how the other newer curve is looking, because some of the amounts we received about some of the original amounts as expected, but by bringing in our discussion for the end of the primary.
Sure.
It's going to just reassure us that
Thank you, Terry. The other, Terry has pointed out, Terry has pointed out, and I wish to emphasize a little bit more about the fact that some of the amounts that were discussed before in terms of financial accounts that you had a total of so much cash in the bank or so much cash in hand is under review right now by a separate CPA firm because it was off a little. And therefore, they will issue an opinion as to that amount. It will, in turn, potentially change the distribution to each of you, an amount to be determined. And I don't want to say an amount tonight because I can't. I don't know the exact amount. And I don't know if in fact it will change or change that much because the other variable is the number of shareholders. And until we can determine how many shareholders are being terminated, how many shareholders are we left with, we can't be certain of the distribution amount. I will tell you that when the distribution amount of $115,000, approximately $115,000 was discussed, it was done with the intention of having actually some fluff in that number, and that it could actually have ended up being a little higher because of other factors. And now it could be a little lower. And so what you need to decide when you receive this package, should that be the case, is that enough to make a difference to you, knowing that this is very accurate now? Or was the fact that it was approximately this number so embedded in your mind that anything different is not going to satisfy you? We want to be certain, this board, your legal counsel, and your CPA firm experienced in this work specific to this transaction gives you the correct information. We wish we had seen it sooner, but you know it's better to have seen it a week before the vote than a week after. And knowing that this vote could be postponed and adjourned without any harm or foul, there was no reason not to. And therefore, it will occur in the first week of August, and you will have that information updated and reviewed by the CPAs well in advance. But I will say, there is a chance that even
They don't listen.
even more shares could end up being terminated. And that number means that the the lower that number, the lower the number of shareholders, the higher the sale proceed, the higher the proceeds to each shareholder. Does that make sense? Yes. So this is kind of a little bit of a moving target. What your board votes on next week is really a $1 million plus decision. There's 12 on the chopping block, so to speak. And after that, I know I saw the gesture. After that, I think you chopped it. Yeah. After that, there's, anybody watch Chop? You know the show Chop? After that, there could be others. It's a question of delinquency. It's a question of simply enforcing your rights under your documents. It's a question of implementing a legal procedure that's been available to you for years, specifically for this reason. And it's just a fact of doing it. And if it's done, then everyone will financially gain. All right, that's where we are. I think, did I answer that, Terry, or explain it a little better? Okay. Let me go down the line if I could. Terry, is there anything else you'd like me to address this evening? Okay. David?
I'd just like to have you reconfirm, if you vote proxy and you vote yes or no, that does affect your ultimate possibility of payout.
Well, if, I think David has asked, Board Member David Humphreys has asked, if you vote yes or no, it does impact the ultimate payout.
Correct.
And if the vote carries, remember now, 51% is the vote requirement. 50 plus 1. 50% plus 1. If the vote carries, then everybody shares in the sale proceeds, regardless of how they voted.
Well, in prior conversation, that was not true. That was brought up with what I said, but it is.
Everybody shares.
It will be equal.
It will be equal. Everybody shares. And if it goes no, then there's obviously nothing to be shared. But everybody has to, if it goes forward, obviously go through the share redemption procedure, turning in your shares. We've talked about that before. I had a gentleman, it's worth bringing up, I had a gentleman, don't know where he is, but he asked the question before we started about share modifications. Will we still do that? Yes, we will. We will still do the share modification. Everything will continue. There's no change in the legal requirements, no change in the procedures here, or the opportunity for anyone here to change their shares. If this sale goes through, if the vote goes through, then we'll have time to do all that. The only thing that could be expedited, and there's good reason, as I said before, would be to have the buyer showing their firm commitment, come in and start doing their homework, let them do their engineering and so forth. Because if for any reason anything negative were to be found, it could be addressed immediately rather than have further delay to a transaction. And it gets them through whatever they're looking at quicker. Bob? David, you're good? Bob, anything? Gary? Bonnie? Anything on your side? Sandra? Good? All right. Then I would like to, before we get to Q&A, ask if there is anyone that would like to make a motion for the new vote date. And I was thinking of not waiting till the final week of August, excuse me, of the 90 days, which would be the second week of August, but to do it around August 2nd. It's a Thursday evening. And I don't know if there's any activities that get in the way on that evening, but if Thursday, I thought you said before it was a good night, Bonnie. If Thursday's okay, and if anyone wants to make a motion, then we would reschedule it for Thursday, August 2nd, 6 p.m. And it would be in this clubhouse, would it not, Bonnie? It would be here. Thursday, August 2nd at 6 p.m. Is there a motion on the table for that?
You can't, no, we gotta do it for the
I'll make
board.
a motion for that.
Terry is making a motion. The motion on the floor would be that the adjourned vote be rescheduled for Thursday, August 2nd at 6 p.m. in this clubhouse.
At 6 p.m.
6 p.m., that's correct. And we'll need a second on that. We have a second. E. David Humphreys has seconded the motion. E. David has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion, Sandra? Any discussion? Okay. Judy, did I hear discussion from you? Or you were seconding?
She was second.
Okay, we had a second from the floor from David. Discussion, Bob?
This June 14th meeting, are we having an opportunity to see this list before?
Yes, that list is available to you now,
I sent it to you.
and you should look at it. The amounts of the arrearages are available to you now. The letters that were sent to the delinquent shareholders are available to you. So there's an entire package available to you through the office. Bonnie, can you send that, or somebody send that, perhaps tomorrow, to the whole board? Gary's seen it. And your executive meeting has seen it, but the whole board should see it in advance of the meeting. If you have any questions, we should certainly, we can address it before the
Tell
meeting.
everyone the process.
Be glad to. Would you like me to do that?
Yeah.
Or we could do it next week, or we could,
No, the process of what we did. We
what you did.
sent out a letter to
Yeah,
those people.
okay. Okay, good point. Gary has asked that we discuss the process up here with the board, everyone, and that is that under your documents, if there is a delinquency, or, and I mean a delinquency where the monthly maintenance fee is in arrears, or other charges due from the shareholder have not been paid. And an example of that would be real estate taxes. So every shareholder has the obligation to pay their real estate tax. And if for any particular shareholder there is this delinquency, then the corporation has the right to implement different legal remedies. It is very customary when there is a arrearage or delinquency to do a statutory lien and then ultimately a lien foreclosure procedure. And over the course of years here, just like you would in a condominium, this corporation has gone through that procedure, but it hasn't done it with everyone, interestingly. And to your benefit now, we have found a number of cases where for one reason or another, again, they weren't on the list. You had some shareholders here that just, these procedures weren't implemented, all right? And what's curious about it, David, is that the amounts got to be very large. Very large. In fact, you know, I think when you see these letters, you'll say, wow, right? Some of them $20,000, $30,000. So we did some public record research, and we as a board had talked about public record research. Terry, you'll remember we talked about doing searches of the entire community. Every single lot was researched and abstracted by a national title company. And what we determined by doing this real property audit was that some of these people were dead. And others have abandoned or left. And that's how the debt got to be so large. And for whatever reason, when the debt was small or as the debt accumulated, maybe the home was pulled off the lot, it's hard to understand what was going on over the period of years. but there was never an effort to collect any money from that person, and a remedy was not implemented that you have under your documents to terminate their shareholdership. And so we counseled the board about terminating the shares rather than foreclosing a lien. And here's the big difference. If you foreclose a lien, it goes to an auction or judicial sale, and anybody can buy the share. In this situation out here, with shares being worth over $100,000, 110, 115, whatever it turns out to be, or more, whatever it turns out to be, the fact is, it shouldn't be able to be bought at auction for 20 anymore. How many people would like to go buy another share at 10 or 20 and sell it? Well, and that is what we had to stop. And this board acted prudently and quickly, I might add, but not without a lot of question as to the legal procedure, exactly what would be involved, and how it would resolve. Now, the legal procedure and how it would resolve is as follows. It is required that a letter go to the delinquent shareholder. And it was determined up front by your executive team to look at the most delinquent, those that were clearly, right, Gary, extremely delinquent. And again, we had 11 or 12 of those, if my memory is correct, that went off immediately, and 20 days had to go by. Interesting that a prior administration, some many years ago, about a decade ago, amended the notice requirement from 30 days to 20 days. So you had an administration here a decade ago that knew about this, knew how to do this, and actually had a legal document prepared that shortened the notice period from 30 days to 20 days to the delinquent shareholder. Yet it's never been, the letter's never been sent and the procedure's never been done. So when we looked at all this, we said, well, what a perfect opportunity to pick up $1 million+ for all of you. Anybody against that? No? So next week, what we do, the 20 days will run. They will have run by next week. David, I want to say by Monday. And we will have a meeting on Thursday night of this board. It will take 6 of the 7 board members to vote in favor of terminating the shares and recapturing that money for you. We will go individually through each one. We will not just do a mass, here they are, situation. Pardon me? We won't do, no, we'll go individually through each one. And the vote will be on each one, by the way, not in mass.
That's fine.
Each one, I think it's appropriate you do it that way.
I do too.
Yeah, I think you vote each one individually. I think it's appropriate. Is there anyone on the board against doing it that way? We could do it the other way, but I just think it'd be better if we did it that way. You okay with that? So we'll do each one individually. Now, it's going to be interesting because you might say, gee, I remember Harry. But Harry has received his notice, and Harry will have had every opportunity to pay. And Harry owes you guys a lot of money right now. So while he might have been the life of the party at one time, he's on the chopping block right now. You will have, Harry and all others that are on the list have the opportunity to come that evening and address the board. So anyone that's on the list, and they've all received their notices, certified mail, return receipt requested, they have the opportunity if they want to come and address the board, but it should be cash on the barrel, payment in full, or else at this point. And that's the procedure. So thank you for having me go through that again. And then we'll be, through the first batch. Now there could be a second or a third batch. That would mean we have to do another set of notices and have the same procedure again. Okay, good, great, Gary. Anything else, Gary? Terry?
The night of the meeting,
Yes.
are all the policies assigned to board members? Were any of, okay, so they are, so the board members have to be sure and be here, right? Because don't.
Terry is absolutely right.
Yes.
Every
August meeting.
proxy holder has to be here in person.
That
So we're on the
August
proxy
meeting.
holder.
The proxy holder, yes, ma'am. Like the whole board to be here, but yeah, certainly, most definitely. All right, anything else? We're coming down the line. Gary, that was good. Anything else? Okay, Bonnie, anything on your end? Sandra? Okay, we have one board member on the phone. Judy, anything on your end?
I have a question, this may not be fair to say that's true. That's true from people's minds. If we do have an hurricane, you think the sale is still going to
Okay, Judy has asked if we had a hurricane, do I think the sale would still go through? And I have no way to answer that question. I don't know. I think none of us can ascertain what would happen if a hurricane hit. You know, how bad was the damage? You know, is it catastrophic? Is it minor? So Judy, I don't know. I would like to make one point to you. If the vote had taken place on May 10th, the goal was to be, if it went forward, if the vote was in favor, to be under a contract that would have gone through the summer to a closing in the fall, and we had said, let's target September 1st. If a hurricane would have hit this summer, the buyer would have still had the right to make that decision at any point up to the closing date. So nothing has changed from that standpoint. The fact that yeah, well, no, it's you know, the old saying, until the fat lady sings, until it closes and the money is wired into your corporate account, that will be the case, except they'll have money non-refundable. Remember, they're putting $2 million up at a certain point here, right? 3 million in the community. I think it's, is it 3 million hard?
Yes.
So there'll be a tremendous amount of risk on their part if they were to pull out, but if the entire community were destroyed or something along those lines, I would imagine they might. So Judy, I can't answer with anything
That's okay,
definite.
thank you.
You bet.
You
Okay.
know what?
Okay, now, did we vote?
No, we didn't. I
We
was
did
just gonna
not.
tell you
We've had discussion. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that motion at the board level? No? I'd like to call the question. You want to go ahead and call the question?
Sure. I'll call the question. So the motion on the table is that we have the special shareholder meeting on August 2nd, Thursday, at 6 p.m. at this clubhouse. Knowing that it is absolutely essential for the proxy holders to be here and that we would expect the board members to be here. Okay, all of those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion's passed unanimously.
Okay, that has been determined, and a notice will be posted for that meeting date, and in addition, contained in the package that you will receive as a reminder, and for those that aren't here this evening, they'll be receiving it as well. I think one final note on that vote, just remember, anyone that wants to vote by ballot is entitled to vote by ballot that evening. It is imperative that you consider, if you haven't submitted a proxy for sure, to vote your conscience that evening by ballot. And if you wish to change your proxy, you'll be able to at any point, including by a ballot that evening. So everybody understands a ballot supersedes a proxy. And you have an opportunity that evening to vote by ballot. Now, that said, if you've given a proxy, you're fine. If you voted by proxy and you don't wish to change your vote, then your proxy will be used. I'm just reminding anyone that wants to vote by a ballot that they have that opportunity too. and that again would be that evening. No ballot is accepted before that vote that night. That night is when ballots would be tendered. I started the meeting by notifying everyone that you have a record number of votes cast so far. Out of your shareholders, over 85% of you have voted already by proxy. So there is still room for some additional ballots, obviously, and there may well be ballots that evening. And we'll see where the dust settles. Will it go over 90% out here? I would guess it likely will. All right. Is there any other matter, before we close the meeting, is there any other matter to be brought before under this new business by the board? Anyone on the board want to discuss any new matter? No? All right. Then I'm going to turn this back to Bonnie for adjournment.
Okay, I will,
Question and answers?
we'll do that after, this is a board meeting, so we'll do that after
that on
we
your
adjourn.
agenda?
I know, but we'll do that after we adjourn. This is question and answers for the board. And once we adjourn the board meeting, then we do questions and answers for the shareholders, just like a regular board meeting.
Says here.
Just so, no, I know, just so everyone understands what your agenda is for the board. So I will,
Make a motion, we adjourn.
okay, we have a motion on the table for adjournment, a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second from Sandra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the meeting has been adjourned. Now I will take questions from shareholders.
Yes, and Ed has one. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, in light of the letter that was released by the president this week, and the discussion and conversation that you had about the outside firm that you got doing an audit, and looking at this the latest financial report, my question to the board and to the president is, when that information was turned over to that accounting firm, did you turn over all of the information on all the accounts?
Okay, the process is, we give the accounting firm access to the financial institutions. They get the information from them. Okay?
Okay.
So all of that, we have signed, given permission, so that they can do that.
I just want to make sure I got this clear. So they have access to all the Wells Fargo accounts,
That's correct.
and they have access to all the Seacoast accounts.
They took the Seacoast account information from us, rather than going directly to them, because those are operating funds and they change all the time. The Wells Fargo, they went directly to, because that's the greater amounts.
Did we give them all the information on all 5 accounts?
Yeah, they have all the information.
And the entire board's in agreement with that statement?
Well, I don't know if anybody else would know, since I'm the one that signed off to, Gary would probably, because since I'm the one that signed off to give them the information, I'm probably the only one that knows that. Yes, they've got the information, I signed and had things delivered, so that they could get like all of the direct information from Wells Fargo.
They can get it from Wells Fargo, but they can't get it from Suncoast.
Well, what has been delivered to them from Suncoast is, Seacoast, I'm sorry, Seacoast, not Suncoast. Seacoast, Suncoast is a school, is the operating, it's the operating funds, but we give them the statement that we get, or pull the statement on a daily basis. That operating fund, changes every day.
I understand that, but I don't understand how you access or give them access to one bank and not the other.
I went by what their request was when they had all the information.
Pardon me?
I went by the request of the accounting firm and their process.
Well, I would think the accounting firm would ask for all the accounts.
Okay, go, Judy has a comment? Go ahead, Judy.
I think the reason why they probably didn't ask for the Suncoast information is because, as we told them, there's too many accounts going pretty slowly, and we realized there would be enough in any of these accounts to substantially influence the final numbers.
The answer was Judy felt that they probably didn't request that direct access on the Seacoast accounts because those accounts are free flowing and there's not that much money in any of those accounts to affect the final number.
Well, how could they request something if they didn't know the account existed?
They know the account existed. They got all of these they got all this information, and we sent printed statements, but then they validate them by having access. Okay, I need to know your name and lot number, please.
My name is Barry Bernhardt, and my lot number is $125,000.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's 1274, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
1237.
Okay.
Do we know how many shares we have now
Yeah.
in regard, not counting the 12?
What, 622, not counting
The
the
12.
12.
And we do have, as Mr. Bernstein said, we have the first 12 that we're looking at.
What I mean, not counting, what I mean, the 12 are in that 622 number.
Yeah. Yeah, 622. That includes the 12 that we're looking at next week.
You're right too, in that could come down.
Which is the number we've used all
Could
along.
come down.
And we have attorneys investigating and sending letters to the next 12. Okay, go ahead.
Phyllis 529, the prepayment penalty.
Well, I will try to repeat it,
We should give them.
because we're having a little trouble tonight. Oh, he's gonna get it, okay. Did you, wait a minute, before we go to that,
Gary,
did you hear the things that have already been discussed? It was a number of shareholders, just a minute.
622.
It was a number of shareholders, and Gary confirmed it was 622. 622, that, included in that 622 are the 12 that we're gonna be looking at next week. Okay, that we couldn't terminate.
Phyllis 529, is the prepayment penalty of the $1 million, is it still going to be paid by ELS?
Yes.
It wasn't mentioned.
Yes.
The what?
Okay, the question is, the prepayment penalty on your mortgage of $1 million, will it still be paid by ELS? The answer is yes, it will be. There's no change in any of the terms.
Okay.
They'll still pay that. That was a rumor out here, I heard, by the way. I'm glad
Well,
that
it
you brought
wasn't
it.
in the letter. It wasn't in the letter that you sent us. It just said 70 million. It didn't mention the 1 million.
There's no change in that.
Okay. I have, if you allow them, ELS, to come in prior to closing, and they find problems, are they going to be trying to take away from our 70 millions to cover those
Well, no,
problems?
we wouldn't allow it. No.
Okay.
It's a very good question. And let me say, they're going to have the right to come in here and look at this property, whether you let them start now or it's later. The reason you would do it now is so they've done it. Listen, people are worried about a hurricane. Why don't we get them locked in here and done before anything like that could happen? Why don't you get them through the process earlier than later?
Right.
You know, make them spend money. When they're spending money and committing to us, then that's the best sign that this is going to go forward. And I would encourage the board to seriously consider allowing that, rather than waiting for them to start as late as, you know, sometime in August. They could possibly be done by then. You could have the vote maybe still close earlier than anticipated now. So, no, it wouldn't change any of that.
Recognize the
You've
right.
got a
Okay,
number
go
of
over,
people.
over there. And we also got Dwight over here. I'll go over there first. She was,
Coming over. When does the board
wait a second.
We follow about 684. When does the board anticipate making the decision to give ELS access?
We will put it, the question was when could we give,
We'd have to have a special meeting.
can we put it on the 14th?
We could put it on the 14th.
I just asked Linda to put it on the agenda for the 14th.
Yeah, and
Good
we
idea.
need to define exactly what they're gonna be doing.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, let's put it on the agenda.
She's gonna announce it.
We'll put it on the agenda for the 14th.
That's fine with me.
We, actually, there will be an agreement that we would have to sign, so, or that I would have to sign, so we'll discuss. You wanna go over to Chris?
Well, there's a
Or
gentleman
go to
here.
Dwight. And I've got a lot of people around.
I don't need a mic. Dwight Cornell, lot 1331. You know, I don't like the sale. I'll put that out front. I said that to you at the first meeting we had, remember?
Can't hear you.
I do not believe that they should be allowed to start any work until there is a signed, sealed contract on the table. Thank you.
Actually, what we're talking about in agreement is not work, but they're investigating, they're bringing in people to look at.
No, look, I think what Dwight's saying, and it's a good point, and it is worth considering.
They may decide when they take a look at this place, hell no, I'm getting out of here.
That's their decision.
Well, I guess, but here, Dwight, so you understand, there's no rumor about this. We would not allow, I'm not recommending that the board, I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying, and I didn't go through it completely. I'm not recommending that they be allowed access here to do anything without there being an agreement in place, and that be a board reviews it, board agrees to it, be written, and that would have to be.
I don't want them to start digging holes and then walk away from it.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and it's a good point, and I think it's something we'll further discuss next week.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, very good, fair enough.
Joy Garofalo, lot 764, I think.
Yes, that's your lot.
We're there today. Here's my question. If ELS backs out, what's our shot with Sun Communities?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Aren't you though? And after this, I have a statement, so go ahead.
I think there would still be a shot with Sun Communities, and I think you should know that ELS is concerned about that. There is no question about it.
Well, competition's a good thing.
And that's how you got an extra $9 million here, ma'am, because we were able to negotiate this transaction up to the $70 million plus because of that competition. And I have reminded ELS's lawyers that if they blink, they will lose this transaction. I have, on top of that, on your behalf, stayed in touch with Sun Communities, and their last request of me was to please let them know how the vote goes, and to be assured that they would still have interest. So I don't have any worries about ELS terminating this as I sit here today. Yeah, sure, if there's a hurricane or something like that, we've discussed that. But as we sit here today, every indication, their letter of assurance, everything points to their sincerity to conclude this transaction and to pay the $70 million plus, the escrow, nothing is to change. If they blink, as I said, yes, there would be an opportunity. But the vote is on these terms, and remember, ELS was $3 million more than Sun offered in the bidding. So
I don't know if that ever came out that they offered more money than Sun.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. It did. $3 million. Yes, ma'am. But the answer to your question is, it's good to have competition. I agree.
Okay, now I have a statement. The Meadows on PGA Boulevard was purchased by ELS about 8 years ago.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
That's a fact.
So I went over there and there happened to be a lady on her porch.
Talk into the mic.
Oh, there was a lady on her porch and I asked her, was she happy with ELS? And she was very pleased. She had nothing but accolades about ELS and the improvements they did, capital improvements over the 8 years since they took over.
Well, that's good news.
So anybody that's a little reluctant, I'm sure if you rode through the Meadows there, you could ask any resident hanging out.
Thank you much. All right, let's, Ed, before you go, there's anyone else that hasn't asked a question? Okay.
Man over here, right? You didn't talk to everybody over there.
Just a quick question and try to get it, not Tinker, lot 521. All the information you're referring to is Article 8, rights to the lease. Am I correct?
Most of it is.
I believe a lot of it is there, yeah.
Okay, does the individual have the right to pay up?
Yes.
Yes.
Have the right to pay up? If so, Does the board have the right to fine the individual?
Yeah, but that
We've already
defining
done.
process has not been implemented. The defining process, you have to have a board of their peers, and they have to have a hearing and all that other stuff.
But we have assessed late fees.
Right.
And so we have done that consistently, so.
With the percentage on top of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So and what Gary's talking about, when you're looking at fines, there is a whole process where you have to have a board of peers that they can come and challenge the fine. So we haven't done that.
Okay, now Article 7, number 4, can you use this to buy back the shares on the individuals that are delinquent?
I'm not sure what is Article 7 say?
Article 7.
We're not gonna let them.
We're not, but
No, us buy back the shares.
we don't have to buy back the shares because they owe us money.
If they purchase the share, if they try to purchase the share, can we buy it before they?
There is no purchasing the share, it's terminated.
We've been outbid. If we bid on these shares, we get outbid.
I know.
If they're lining up by the hundreds to bid on a share, okay? So we can't bid higher than people are bidding.
Gary, tell them about the tax sale that we already did, we went
We
through.
had a tax sale, we bid $30,000.
Way over what was due.
Way over what was due on the tax sale. With 30 seconds to go, the winning bid was $41,000 by somebody who already owns a share.
Wow.
So that's why the environment has changed and why foreclosures and tax sales are not good for us.
Haven't been good enough.
Well, they haven't been good when you apply the attorney's fee, that's correct.
But what we will follow is the procedure that talks about termination. So we're not buying that, we're voting to terminate.
Thank you.
Go over to Chris next.
Where do I go?
Chris over there. He's been, and we can, everybody on their first question first.
I'll walk out of here so I don't look as much like a troll in the corner. You guys know we've been dealing with state issues with my dad's chair, right? Okay. What the plan was we would close out probate after dad's house here sold, right? But now that it's got pushed off, we may need to transfer dad's share to the trust.
That's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
It's okay?
That's fine.
You're fine.
Easy peasy.
Let us see that happy dance again.
Next, you tell me next.
Go ahead, Ed.
There's a gentleman excuse me, there's a
Was there
woman
somebody
behind
over there that asked him?
Right behind you, Gary.
Right behind. This lady here. Go ahead.
Marion Whitmore, Lot 497. I'm asking a question that was referred to me by one of our snowbirds. If I may.
Sure.
Speak into the mic, Mark.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Just read what they have asked me to ask you. Okay. We paid a CPA firm to certify by issue a standard opinion that the financials were free of any material misstatement or error through 12/31/17. If that firm did not do due diligence in performing necessary audits to obtain evidence to back up their opinion, we have recourse to offset the price of a new CPA firm. First question, specify which assets on the balance sheet are in question and why. Second question, were the financial statements properly audited for 2017 by the CPA firm? 3, what did we pay the prior CPA and the current CPA firm? No.
Okay, I don't think it's going to be possible to answer all those questions because they're very specific data that I don't have in front of me. But
may I talk to you about that at some other time?
Yeah, I mean, and that information is also in the office.
Just a few comments on that though.
Go on.
CPA firms audit the information given to them. Okay? So they only specify that the information given to them resulted in this.
Right.
So that gets them basically a get out of jail free card. Because the information given to them was incorrect. Okay? And so the CPA firms committed, they've all presented accurate reports, they were all submitted to the proper authorities, they were all approved, not questioned.
And we did have the audit that, that you referred to.
You had 2 questions then.
You want one, Art? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dan.
you do that at everything.
David, one of the concerns that you mentioned was about the payoff of the loan. And I think one of the problems that circulate in the community is the fact that we know that we have to pay the 4.2 million or whatever the case is. Now, I think what the concern is, the people are concerned about the fact we're going to pay our portion, but is ELS going to pony up and write a $1 million check at that time so we can get a clear title to that and then we move on with the process? I think that's where that concern or that rumor is generated.
The answer is yes. And what will happen at the closing, what will happen at the settlement, this is an important point, is that this corporation will be responsible for payment of the principal balance and interest. Ed used the amount of 4.2 million. It might be less than that. But you would only pay that. The break fee, which is a penalty to pay off early, called a prepayment penalty, is to be paid by ELS and will be paid by ELS. In the contract, it will be specified as it is in their letter of intent offer. Now, their lawyers have shared with me that they do a lot of business with Wells Fargo. And when I queried them or questioned them on this very point and let them know we want an intent for this to be specifically addressed in the sale contract, they said they want the option to assume the loan. And if they can assume it, then that $1 million payment may not have to be paid. We don't care because we ain't paying it either way.
Oh, we're paying.
We still owe the 4.2 or whatever that amount is because they would be assuming the indebtedness and taking it away from us. But we would, that $1 million payment, that's a way for them to try to negotiate with Wells Fargo to get out of them having to pay it. But we'll never have to pay it, Ed. We don't have to pay
No, but we still have to pay the 4.2.
Yes, sir. We would pay the 4.2. But just be aware that in their mind, they're going to try to negotiate. They have the responsibility to pay that $1 million unless they can somehow get around it. And they're thinking of assuming it, and maybe that'll help. But that's their problem, not ours.
But that's what generated the concern.
Yeah, maybe it is.
No, it is.
Okay, but there is no question that this corporation will not be paying that $1 million. No, sir.
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier the possibility.
I can't hear you, ma'am.
You mentioned earlier the possibility of there being another batch of these shareholders.
Yes.
Yes.
There is.
Can we talk more about that?
Well,
We haven't decided who they are yet.
that's right. Gary's right. Gary, you want to go ahead and discuss that?
No, I don't have to discuss it, but I will say, hint, hint, pay your property tax if you haven't. Shareholders have to pay what they owe to co-op, and they have to pay their property tax.
There's one over there.
They also have to pay this year's property tax when it comes due in November.
That's Barry lot 1123. David, you said that there was a possibility Sun Company would be interested in this if ELS something happened to them. Would we have to go through all this mess all over again with Sun Company?
Well,
With all, chasing
Bonnie-
foxes.
Bonnie just said you can find the new president. You may have to get a whole new board if you do, but no. I mean, I wouldn't put our let's not
Don't
jump
lose any
ahead.
sleep over it. Eric.
Yeah, I mean, if you were in that situation, it'd be a negotiation with Sun, sure.
Miriam Higgins, Lot 393. I have heard of rumor, and I'm hoping, probably not the board to answer, but actually the lawyer, that many people have talked or spoken about the fact that they're going to take their share, whatever that amount is, not their share, their profits, the 115 or whatever it turns out to be, and they're leaving. The rumor I heard is if you leave, you won't get the full 115.
No,
Because you have to sign a lease with PLC.
No, we've already been through that, and we've already addressed that in the meetings that we had. And whether you stay or go, and Mr. Happy Dance is an example, you're going to be able to have the full distribution to you. That has nothing, right, David?
As long as you give us an address.
Thank you.
Unless you get terminated by the hatchet man over here.
I just have a question. Andrew Stewart. If you can't get in touch with somebody and give them their check, does it hold up all of our checks?
No, ma'am.
So you'll just hold on to their money until you can find it?
Yeah, and I'm betting $1 to a donut that they'll find out. David Humphreys has volunteered to hold all the checks.
Wait, I'm asking for her.
Okay, yeah, Pat.
Okay, I don't need the microphone. She's talking about you should have to stay a year after you get the check, right? But that's only for tax, isn't that right?
You don't have to stay.
No, for what is it, capital gains?
That has to do with before, how long you held the share before the sale, not after the sale.
Okay, before.
All right. I appreciate it.
We got one more, we got one more.
one more.
And that's the last one.
And
behind you, that's why.
we have one more behind you.
Yes, I want to thank the board for ferreting out the truth. It's taken a lot more than anyone else would have imagined, and you've done an incredible job.
Thank you.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys. See you on the 14th.